The tale begins high in the heavens, above the clouds, in an exceedingly tranquil place, where there exists a gentle-natured cat who takes his entire world and places it upon a floating island suspended above the earth. That cat falls in love with another black cat, and in the end, they marry. Because of this union, the world is divided into two halves: the White Kingdom, floating above, and the Kingdom of Darkness and Shadow below. The Queen of the Whites rules the floating island of the Whites, while the Dark King governs the island of the Blacks. As long as the Whites remain in their floating island in the sky, and the Blacks live below on the earth, the world continues to exist in balance and stability. Down below, on the ground, the world is locked in a brutal struggle against a ruthless lord named Baal. There, a nameless young boy appears and goes to meet the elders. They ask him whether he is ready for today's mission, and how they will go out to hunt and bring food for all members of the community, hoping to return with enough to sustain everyone. Suddenly, a man comes running to announce that the gate is under fierce attack, and that creatures of darkness have assaulted the men. The men rush out in great numbers with their weapons, and the women follow, wielding their shovels to fight as well. They order the young boy to take all the children and lead them away to the edge of the village, where there is a cave in which they can hide and remain safe. The boy moves quickly, gathering the children and leading them away, but he is weak and unable to protect them all. In the end, only 2 children remain with him, siblings. One of the girls is attacked by a monster and is severely injured. The boy lifts her in his arms and tries to reach the cave, but without realizing it, a monster slips in behind him and attempts to strike. At that moment, the 3rd child, trying to protect his siblings, chooses to sacrifice himself for the greater good. He rushes toward the monster and is killed, telling the young boy to take his injured sister to safety and leave him behind to die. In the end, the entire village is reduced to complete ruin, with no one left alive. The young boy finds it unbearably difficult to think about life, having lost everything that once gave it meaning, and seeing no reason worth continuing to live for. And so, he begins to dig a hole. At the same time, an elderly and somewhat frail man enters the city while holding his map, thinking that there must be nearby cities where he can spend the night. But as he draws closer, he discovers that no city remains. He then notices the young boy inside the hole and asks him about the nearby cities. The boy asks him where he is headed and tells him that there is no city there anymore, and that all settlements have been reduced to ruins and destruction. The boy is shaken and asks the old man whether their city was truly under the protection of the Dark King, and why the Dark King merely watched until they were all destroyed. The old man does not believe in the integrity of the Dark King, for reasons that will be revealed later, but for now he only says that the entire kingdom lies under the rule of the Dark King. The man notices the boy digging the hole and asks him why he is doing so. The boy asks him not to ask any questions, saying that even if he explained, the man would never understand what he is feeling or what he has been through. He adds that what he is doing may seem meaningless to others, but it is the only way that allows him to feel even slightly better. The man insists on knowing the reason, and the boy finally tells him that he wants to draw closer to the light. The White Kingdom lies in the sky, and he feels that a deep hole will allow the light to reach him more easily than standing on ordinary ground. The man tells him to stop digging and says that he is hungry and has not eaten for a long time, and that he must calm down before he collapses. The boy replies that he will not collapse because he sleeps well. The man answers, "How can there be good sleep without food?" He then throws him a loaf of bread, which the boy catches and eats quickly and efficiently, nearly choking. The man then throws him water, and the boy drinks, becoming visibly joyful and full of excitement. The man asks him to climb out and rest, but when the boy refuses, he throws him a sword. He asks why the boy is digging a hole when he could exert his full effort to help the situation. The boy replies that he does not see this as his role, and that he is not capable of doing anything in the first place. The man introduces himself, saying that his name is Skir, and asks the boy for his name. The boy answers that he has no name, and that everyone calls him whatever they like, so Skir tells him that he will call him by a name of his own choosing. Skir draws his sword and begins to fight the boy. The boy is confused by his actions and wonders whether Skir intends to teach him how to fight, especially since he does not wish to learn to battle monsters on his own. Skir tells him that no one here will come to save him. The boy realizes that he is no match for Skir and tries to stop the fight, but Skir is surprised and asks, Then why did you take the sword in the first place? In the end, Skier halts the battle and says that he never knew his end would be this calm and peaceful. The boy asks how he knows and says that he no longer wants to fight, yet at the same time admits that he still wants to fight Skier. Skier then tells him that this is the end of his life and explains that he is the Prince of Darkness and that he once fought the Dark King in an attempt to seize control of the kingdom after discovering that the world was not functioning as it should. However, he failed to defeat the Dark King and was gravely wounded, leading him to search for a suitable place to die. He never imagined that he would find such a calm and peaceful end with a young boy. He throws his sword to the boy and tells him that he has chosen him to become the new Prince of Darkness, and even the king as well. He orders him to go to the city and visit his palace, assuring him that anyone who sees that sword in his possession will immediately acknowledge him. The boy refuses to go, but Skier tells him that he sees his younger self in him and says that the world is not right and that someone must help change it. He also tells him that there is a great knight stationed at his headquarters named Valis, and that if the boy proves himself strong and brave, Valis will follow him. He adds that Valis is fiercely loyal to the one he chooses, and if he offers to accompany him, he will remain by his side until the very end of the world. Skier dies, and the young boy continues his journey to the city alone. At the same time, the White Kingdom is also subjected to violent assault. Warriors and monsters from the Kingdom of Darkness are sent to kill them. All armies enter the battle, including the Queen of Light, Iris, herself, along with the mage, the Knight Commander Shima, Fass, and several other key warriors. As the fighting rages on, they call upon the Rune Guardian to grant them support. After the war comes to an end, Fass returns to his home, where he meets his younger brother Theo, who is overwhelmed with joy simply to see him alive. At the same time, Shima encourages all the warriors, urging them to rest and prepare for the next war. She then departs to meet Fass, and the two of them enter the house together to speak about Iris. Fass asks Shima whether Iris's power comes from the crown she wears, and whether she truly believes that Iris can defeat the Dark King with that power. They both acknowledge that Iris is indeed powerful, but that she cannot exhaust her strength completely, because doing so could lead to her death. Fass advises Shima not to discuss this matter in front of others, so that it will not be interpreted as an insult to the queen. After the war, one of Iris's attendants notices the signs of severe fatigue and weakness upon her, asks whether she has consumed too much of her power, and advises her to rest. However, Iris is unable to sleep, so she leaves and heads toward the ruins of the first ancestor, seeking protection and aid. Shima follows Iris there, and Iris calls out to her, saying, "My elder sister." She reveals that before they competed for the title of Queen of Light, they used to train together, and that Shima was one of the people who helped her become stronger. Shima reminds her that she has now become the queen, that she was the one who won the confrontation between them, and therefore she is certain that she deserves this position. She then asks Iris whether she remembers the previous Queen of Light, and how her face always carried a smile as she watched the competition. The two of them admit that the memories of the former Queen of Light have begun to fade, and they both wish for the war to end quickly, and for the Dark King to change his stance. Iris says that she is certain the world will become a better place when the next Dark King arrives. Shima asks her whether she still believes she will be alive by the time the new Dark King comes. Iris replies that she does not care whether she lives or dies. All that matters to her is that the world will one day become a safe place for all people. After some time, the young boy arrives at the Kingdom of Darkness and asks about Skier's palace. The knight standing at the gate asks him where he obtained the sword he carries. Before the boy can explain, the knight begins attacking him and engages him in combat. The boy immediately realizes that this knight may be Valis, and asks him his name. Valis acknowledges his identity and asks about Skier, and the boy tells him that Skier is dead. Valis erupts in anger and violently attacks the boy, knocking him to the ground. He approaches him and says that he knows the boy could not have killed Skier because he sees him as weak. The boy introduces himself and declares that he is the Prince of Darkness and the future king. Valis laughs mockingly and asks whether he truly believes he can achieve all of that while living amid such ruin. But the boy answers him bravely, affirming that he can do so even in the midst of ruin because he knows his own power and abilities. Valis is convinced by his words and promises to follow him. He also allows him to reside in Skier's headquarters within the White Kingdom. At that very moment, one of the guards announces that the western gate is under attack by Baal. Iris orders Shima to contact the rest of the mages so they may join the battle and commands Fast to lead the knights into combat. Shima uses her crown to transmit the warning to all the mages, and everyone awakens, prepares for battle, and heads to their assigned positions. Bal is eager to fight Iris and roams throughout the city searching for her. When he encounters a group of mages, he attempts to intimidate them, telling them that instead of dying in battle, they should simply send Iris to him. The mages attack him with their magic, but none of their assaults affect him. He counterattacks, destroying the entire surface on which they are standing. He moves on and encounters a group of knights led by Fast, repeating his demand that they not waste their lives in battle and instead bring Iris to him. They do not respond and begin firing arrows at him. As Bal prepares to attack them, Lord Alansha suddenly appears and fights in their place. The knights thank him and return to the city to protect the remaining people. Upon seeing Alansha, Bal recognizes him immediately and says that he is the leader of the elves, the one who commands the three spirits, fire, water, and earth. Alansha orders the spirits to attack, and Bal is prepared for their assault. When they strike him, he praises them, saying they are skilled, but that their attacks are not enough. Bal attempts to counterattack, and when Alansha witnesses his true power, he shouts and orders the spirits to retreat. He realizes that Bal is far stronger than he had imagined, begins to sweat, and thinks desperately about how to survive. Suddenly, Iris appears. She stands by the wall and sees many of her people lying dead. The last living person prays for her, and she descends to the battlefield. She warns Bal and tells him that if she fights him, she will not allow him to continue existing, while Bal stands ready for all of her attacks. At the same time, as Fast makes his way toward the kingdom, he encounters two men and assumes they are knights from the kingdom of the Blacks. He confronts them and accuses them of cowardice for taking advantage of Bal's engagement in battle. The two men insist that they are not knights, but merely fugitives searching for a place to rest. Fast orders them to drop their swords, and they comply, kneeling before him. Suddenly, a force of darkness surrounds them, and they seize their swords once more. Fast kills one of them and orders his knights to fight the other. Iris finds it extremely difficult to fight Bal, as he proves to be overwhelmingly powerful. She decides to consume all of her power, but Alansha warns her of the consequences. She restrains herself, and Bal feels humiliated fighting her while she is not using her full strength, so he withdraws and leaves, hoping to return when she is ready for a true battle. In the kingdom of the Blacks, Bas meets with the Dark King, but finds that he is not present. The knight who led the attack on the White Kingdom earlier that day arrives to deliver his report, saying that they must stop the fighting. He complains about losing a knight, and asserts that the people of the Blacks are not savage monsters who fight anyone at any time. Before Valis can respond, the Dark King suddenly appears and attacks the knight, killing him. After sitting down, Valis tells him that he should not have stained his hands with blood, because if he had wished, Valis could have killed the knight himself. The Dark King declares that there is no reason for the kingdom of the Blacks to remain on the earth while the White Kingdom stays in the sky, that the two kingdoms cannot coexist in the same world. He asserts that he will not be at peace until the White Kingdom has vanished completely and the entire world is plunged into darkness. Bas admits that the king is right, but warns that this is not a wise plan, because continuing to lose men will lead them to an even greater problem: the king of arrogance. Bal. Valis returns home and meets the young boy, the Prince of Darkness. The prince asks him where he has come from, and Valis answers that he has come from the palace of the Dark King. The prince had believed that Valis's loyalty belonged solely to him, but Valis explains that he is loyal to the king and to whoever comes after him, reassuring the prince that he is loyal to him as well and that there is no reason to fear. The prince tells Valis that he wishes to train with the sword and learn how to fight, declaring that he does not deserve to be king if he cannot even defeat Valis himself. Valis informs him that combat is not the primary goal and that he must read and learn. Valis brings several books and places them before him on the table, ordering him to read, and asks, "How do you intend to become a king if you do not learn? Or do you want the people to starve?" He then speaks to him about agriculture, governance, and the management of the kingdom's affairs, adding that if he desires the dignity of a king, he must pay attention to his words and the way he speaks. At the same time, Valis agrees to train him and tells him that there are other heirs to the throne searching for him, and that he must be exceptional if he wishes to claim the throne. The training begins, and the prince learns at a remarkably fast pace. Elsewhere, within the forest, the gray-green demon lady, Grossa, walks with her knights, searching for the prince. The search has exhausted her, and she wonders how the prince could possibly be in a place like this. She stops briefly to rest when suddenly a group of monsters attacks them. The knights attempt to enter the fight, but she tells them not to worry and steps forward to fight alone. She defeats them with a single strike, and her knights praise her strength. While she is distracted by their admiration, another monster suddenly attacks her, drawing dangerously close, leaving her no time to defend herself and unsure of what to do. Suddenly, the prince appears and kills the monster. He introduces himself as the prince, and Grossa is surprised that he is in such a distant place. He tells her that he is training and that the forest is not far from his home. He adds nothing more and attempts to leave. Grossa is so struck by his handsome appearance that her knights need a moment to recover. She then remembers that she was searching for him and that she has something she wishes to tell him. She calls out to him and asks to speak with him, and they converse. She informs him that there is a competition between him and the other heirs, and that if he wins, he will be recognized as the true prince and will obtain the great sword of the blacks. The prince looks at the sword he took from Skier, causing Grossa to wonder whether he has a special connection to that sword. In any case, the prince decides to take part in the fighting within the White Kingdom. Iris returns to find her kingdom reduced to ruins, and she calls out, requesting aid for the wounded. Shima arrives and tells her that when Foss and the knights returned to protect the city, they were ambushed by warriors from the Kingdom of the Blacks, which was the reason for the losses they suffered. Iris remains lost in thought within her palace, contemplating the heavy responsibilities that have been placed upon her shoulders and how she will be able to bear them all. Shima enters to meet her and calls out to her several times until she notices her. When Iris finally focuses, she tells Shima that she had been lost in her thoughts. Shima asks what she is thinking about, adding that perhaps the former queen had also been lost in her thoughts at times when people believed her to be calm and gentle. Shima informs Iris that she will take responsibility for rebuilding the destroyed city, and Iris asks her to carry it out properly. After Shima leaves, Iris remembers the former queen. She recalls their childhood before she became queen, when she used to wake up very early and stand at the edge of the city, praying for the White Kingdom. On one such morning, Shima comes to her and asks, "Do you still wake up this early?" She then adds that she is not suited for waking early because she loves to sleep. Iris reminds her that she has greater responsibilities and that she must take care of her siblings, Theo and Fass. Shima laughs and says that those two alone are more than enough responsibility, and that if Iris wishes, she can take them herself. They both laugh together. Iris asks Shima, "Do you know what it means to be the Queen of Light?" Shima replies that she has never thought about it. Iris continues to wonder what the true burdens and responsibilities of the Queen of Light really are. They return to their places and see the Queen of Light, admiring her beauty and majesty, each of them anticipating the battle and competition for the title of Queen of Light. They both wish to give their best, but Iris is unsettled. Shima asks her, "Do you doubt yourself, or does the position frighten you?" Iris answers no, then turns the question back to Shima. Shima admits that she often feels the responsibility is greater than she can bear, and that the life of a queen seems dull as she must remain in the palace without going out. She believes she does not have the ability to live such a monotonous life. Iris says that perhaps such a life is not so dull, and that perhaps they do not know whether the queen leaves the palace without anyone noticing. Shima disagrees with her, and they leave together. Shima asks Iris whether she will have dinner with them that night, telling her that Fass has been waiting for a long time, since they have not eaten together for quite a while. They go to gather wild vegetables, take them to Shima's home, and eat together happily. After the meal, Iris thanks them for the food, and Theo asks her whether she will visit them again, and they exchange playful remarks. Fass escorts Iris back to her home, and on the way, she thanks him for the meal. He replies that she deserves it since she also brought vegetables. She reminds him that they can gather vegetables from the forest, but he insists that what she brought tastes better than forest vegetables. Iris asks him, "Do you know what the responsibility of a queen means?" He replies that he does not, but says that his responsibility as a knight is to ensure the protection of the kingdom. The next day, Iris walks through the kingdom, when suddenly a group of monsters attacks her. She tries to flee but cannot escape, and is forced to fight them, eventually managing to defeat them. Suddenly, she hears the voice who tells her that the Queen of Light is the last born of the harshest bloodlines, and that she must walk the path of solitude alone. Iris vows to walk that path no matter what happens. Elsewhere, Bass informs the prince that he must enter the competition, according to family tradition. He tells him that he is going to meet the king, but that he is confident the prince will win, having complete faith in him. The competition begins, and Grossa announces that the first stage will be a battle between all the princes and monsters, and that the last 2 princes remaining will face each other in a one-on-one duel. The monsters are released, and during the battle, the prince saves one of the princesses from death. The others are surprised by his action and wonder why he would help someone during a competition. He replies that he did it simply because he did not want her to die. The princess herself does not accept his action and asks him to leave her to continue fighting on her own. The battle continues, and a massive, powerful monster appears, which no one is able to defeat except the prince, who kills it himself. In the end, the prince qualifies alongside another prince named Adele. Adele follows the prince to the preparation room before the next confrontation and asks him why he saved the girl. The prince answers once again that he does not want anyone to die. Adele tells him that it is impossible for someone to become the Dark King without being prepared to kill, and that he must accept the death of others. The prince insists that if killing is the only path to becoming king, then he would rather search for another path. The second stage of the competition begins, and the prince manages to defeat Adele, but he does not kill him. Adele asks angrily why. He then retrieves his sword and continues the fight, declaring that if he ever gets the chance to kill the king, he will do so without hesitation. But the chance never comes, and the prince wins the battle. The prince receives the great sword of the blacks and leaves alongside Adele and Grossa. Adele introduces himself, and they find Valis standing before them. Valis does not even need to ask about the result of the competition. Adele asks him, "Why have you come?" Valis replies that he has a message for them from the king. The 2 heirs who have qualified must deliver a message to the White Kingdom. At the same time, the prince is consumed by the very same question that had occupied Iris's mind. What truly is the role of the king of the blacks? He repeats this question to himself again and again. Iris takes up her sword and ascends to gaze upon her kingdom, while the prince, Adele, and Grossa begin their journey toward the White Kingdom, boarding a flying vessel high in the sky. The pilots of the vessel do nothing to make the journey easy. They continue speaking at length about how difficult it is to reach the White Kingdom, explaining that the vessel flies only through magic, which makes them mages. And since the vessel has no windows, Grossa, Adele, and the prince sit atop its deck to witness the journey with their own eyes. Shortly before their arrival, Grossa begins to wonder how the mission will unfold and whether they will truly be able to deliver the letter. She explains that even if the world consisted of only these 2 kingdoms, they are still at war, and no matter how things may appear, they are not allies. Pretending that everything is fine would be sheer madness. She then asks the prince whether he believes he can truly deliver the message. The prince replies that even if he is not completely certain of his ability, he believes he can fulfill the role of envoy and deliver the letter. Adele intervenes, telling him that his conversational skills are not the best, and that he appears somewhat shy, asking what makes him so confident he can succeed. The prince insists that he feels capable, but Adele reminds him that the 2 kingdoms are at war and that the manner of communication will determine whether they return safely or not. Adele proposes that, since he is better at speaking and negotiation, he should serve as the envoy, while the prince pretends to be his guard. The idea appeals to all 3, and the prince thanks Adele for his noble gesture. Upon arriving at the White Kingdom, they are met by Fas, who greets them with his sword drawn. The prince draws his own sword in response, but Adele quickly intervenes, apologizing to Fas for the prince's behavior and explaining that they have come only to deliver a message to the queen, with no intention of causing trouble. Fas is surprised and asks whether he is even obligated to accept a letter from them. They attempt to placate him, assuring him that the queen was informed of their visit in advance and that they mean no harm. Adele asks Fas to lower his weapon, but Fas refuses, declaring that the people of the blacks are cowards, willing to do anything to achieve their goals. Adele tries to persuade him, explaining that not all people of the kingdom of the blacks are like that, and that ordinary citizens suffer under the actions of their selfish king, who believes the entire world is in his grasp. He adds that they are powerless to stop him, that the king is capable of killing even his own people, let alone the people of the whites, and that if the king were to die and be replaced, the whole world would become calmer and better for everyone. Fas recalls how weak the knights who attacked them previously had been, and he senses that the common people truly bear no fault. Yet in the end, he declares that what the people of the blacks endure is not his concern, and that they are free to face their own fate. Finally, Foss takes the letter from Adele and sends it to Iris, but he refuses to allow them into the palace. Adele continues speaking, patiently trying to win him over, until at last he succeeds, and Foss invites them inside. He orders them to leave their weapons at the entrance to the palace and leads them within. As they walk and whisper among themselves, he commands them to be silent, reminding them that they are guests and must conduct themselves with proper decorum, and that all speech will be formal before everyone, including the queen. Foss asks Adele how long they intend to stay. Adele replies that they may depart the same day depending on the outcome of the negotiations, or leave the following day, as he knows the talks will not be easy. At last, they meet Iris. Iris looks at the prince, and despite his disguise as a guard, she senses that there is something different about him. She tells them that she has read the letter sent by their king, stating that he wishes the two kingdoms to unite and destroy Baal, but she adds that she feels that if Baal were to disappear, the king would turn all his bloodlust upon her kingdom and destroy it. She admits that Baal poses a real threat to both kingdoms and that they need a long-term solution, but she is not convinced that an alliance with the blacks is the best course of action. The prince intervenes, saying that the war against the White Kingdom will not end unless the current king relinquishes the throne. Adele is shocked by his words, but he quickly moves to contain the situation, explaining that the current king has ruled for many years and plans to abdicate, and that peace will therefore come soon. After the meeting ends, Foss escorts them to their rooms and asks them to remain as guests. Before leaving, the prince asks him about Iris's character. Foss finds the question inappropriate and warns the prince never to speak Iris's name again. The prince apologizes, and they proceed to their rooms. At the same time, the flying vessel returns, and its pilots wonder whether the envoys have returned safely. They say they had expected the people of the Whites to kill them the moment they arrived, but they believe that Adele's eloquent tongue will allow the negotiations to proceed smoothly. A message reaches Grossa informing her that Valis requests to see her as soon as she returns to the city. When she does return, she goes to meet him, and along the way, some men speak of her power, saying that she is capable of monitoring anyone around her, and speculating that she was summoned to confront the demon who is planning to attack them soon. Inside the room, the prince asks Adele what is troubling him, but Adele turns the question back on him, asking why the prince always interferes in the negotiations. He explains that the people of the White Kingdom do not like the blacks and always see them as the ones at fault, and that provoking them will only worsen matters. The prince objects, saying that Iris is different, and that he sees her as a peaceful person who desires peace. The following day, Iris calls them to another meeting. She tells them that she has considered their message, but that she has a question. She says she wishes to direct the question to the prince, which shocks Adele, prompting him to explain that the prince is merely a guard. Iris insists that he answer and asks him, how do the people of the Kingdom of the Blacks truly view this alliance? Her advisor warns her that this question is inappropriate to ask a guard, but she asks him to answer nonetheless. The prince informs those present that the people of the Kingdom of the Blacks were deeply affected by what Baal had done, that he slaughtered a great number of them, and that he believes forming an alliance will prevent the deaths of many more innocents, which is why they support it. On the following day, Iris calls for another meeting and announces her approval of the alliance agreement. Foss stands inside the palace, gazing at Iris's empty throne, for she has traveled to the Kingdom of the Blacks to take part in the battle, leaving him behind to protect the city. At that moment, Shima arrives. She enters the palace intending to deliver the reconstruction report she had been overseeing to Iris, only to find that Iris is not seated upon her throne. She asks Foss where Iris is, and he tells her that Iris has gone to the Kingdom of the Blacks. He then hands her the letter he had received from Adele and the prince. As she reads it, she discovers that part of it states the envoys must be kept in the White Kingdom until Iris returns, to ensure her safe return from the Kingdom of the Blacks. Based on this, Foss tells Shima that he will remain in the palace to guard it, in case Adele or the prince attempt anything hostile. Shima assures him that the reconstruction efforts are progressing extremely well. Foss expresses his feeling that the envoys harbor no malicious intent and are merely resting. Shima grows eager to meet them, but admits that she feels somewhat exhausted and asks Foss to introduce them to her later. In the Kingdom of the Blacks, Iris arrives and soars through the sky. A merchant who has just finished selling his goods to a customer is struck by a strange sensation spreading through the city the moment the customer leaves, a feeling that something terrible will happen that day. Almost at the same time, he sees Iris flying overhead, and he tells his wife to close the shop and gather their belongings, believing it is better not to be present when what is coming arrives. The people of the Kingdom of the Blacks, along with the knights and mages led by Grossa and Valis, prepare to confront Baal. They do not know whether the negotiations with Iris have succeeded, nor whether they can win. Even so, Valis encourages the people, telling them that Baal, the king of selfishness who shatters the balance of the two worlds, has returned once more, and that, as always, he is capable of destroying the entire city in a single moment and slaughtering most of them without reason, simply because he delights in destruction. Therefore, their duty is to stop him and save their city. He admits that it may be difficult, but it is their responsibility, and they will fight for their home. The battle begins, and a group of black beasts is sent to attack Baal. They strike him, but he repels them with his hands and hurls them away, telling them they are far too small to fight someone like him. He then faces Grossa and her mages. Grossa fires arrows at him, but his metallic body shatters them all. Fear grips her, yet she steels herself and orders the mages to unleash the next volley. Baal laughs mockingly and says that such foolish things will never pierce him. He attempts to destroy the building they stand upon, but Grossa survives at the last moment by leaping from its height. They attack him with pillars of fire as well, and he admits the plan is strong, but insists the pillars are not enough to kill him, as he can fly and evade them. Valis tells him that they still possess greater powers and tries to attack him directly, but Baal declares that the time has come for him to respond, and he prepares to unleash an attack capable of annihilating the entire city. At that moment, the Dark King arrives first and orders all his citizens to withdraw from the battlefield, knowing that if the fighting continues, they will die. Baal praises him for his noble action, but says it is not enough. The Dark King calls him the King of Selfishness. Baal asks why he is called that, and the Dark King replies that there is no name more fitting, for he is nothing more than a demon challenging the balance of life. Baal does not care about the name and says he does not like being called a demon or a monster, yet at the same time believes the Dark King has the right to name him. He advises the Dark King to try to bring light into his life if he truly intends to fight. During the battle, Iris arrives carrying a white shackle to bind Baal. Baal did not expect her presence and asks what she is doing there, mocking the Dark King for swallowing his pride and calling Iris to fight in his stead. The Dark King ignores the mockery and declares that all that matters to him is the balance of the world, and that if achieving it requires the destruction of Baal, then Baal will be destroyed. He attempts to seize Baal and confine him within his eternal prison. Baal is surprised that he is not being killed, and then begins to understand what the Dark King may intend for him inside that prison. Meanwhile, Iris has nearly exhausted all her power and barely has enough strength to return to the White Kingdom. In the White Kingdom, Adele encounters Shima and jokes with her, saying he never expected the head of the mages in such a vast society to possess such beauty. She notices the compliment immediately and firmly puts him in his place. The prince sees Iris struggling through the air and rushes to catch her before Shima and Fuse notice her arrival. He lowers her to the ground, and Shima realizes that her power is depleted. She orders Fuse to take Iris to the palace and tells the prince and Adele to remain in their room. Shima notices that Iris had been connected to the runes, which had been draining her physical strength, and as she tends to her, she asks Fuse to inform Adele and the prince of the battle's report so they can return. Inside the prince's room, he is deeply worried about Iris's condition. Adele enters jokingly, saying the prince seems fond of Shima, though he knows the prince truly favors Iris. The prince replies that this is not the time for such talk and moves to leave. At that moment, Fuse enters, and the prince asks him about Iris, but Fuse scolds him, telling him he has no right to ask about her. He then reassures him that Iris will be fine and informs them that the war has ended and that they may return that very night. Grossa returns to her home exhausted and worn when she suddenly encounters Valis. He tells her that imprisoning Baal was a great blessing for their kingdom, and adds that he knows she is tired, but there is still a message that must be delivered to the White Kingdom. He hands her a letter to take with her. As she walks, she thinks of the Prince of Darkness, feeling irritated that they did not even allow her a moment's rest after the war and sent her immediately to the White Kingdom. Yet, after a short while, she calms down when she remembers that the prince is in the White Kingdom and that she will see him as soon as she arrives. Morning breaks in the White Kingdom, and the white tanuki stars fly joyfully through the sky. The queen has recovered and summons Adele and the prince, announcing that the war has ended. Adele thanks her for taking part in the battle, but she says she does not deserve all that praise, for she did very little and merely borrowed a small portion of her power, while the kingdom of the blacks suffered immense losses and devastation to both lives and property. She wishes them a swift recovery. Adele tells her not to worry and explains that the kingdom of the blacks consists of two different kinds of beings, humans and monsters. The monsters are able to endure battle because they regenerate, and they love the kingdom of the blacks because they are drawn to darkness. Iris says she knows about the monsters, and she prays that when they are reborn, they will carry within them the spirit of light. Adele admired the way Iris treated the people of the kingdom of the blacks without any discrimination, so he promised her that when he returned to his kingdom, he would speak to the king and beg him to temporarily halt the war against the kingdom of the whites so that everyone could live in peace, especially since he had previously told him that the king of darkness kills anyone who opposes him or tries to advise him. Fuse questioned whether Adele was certain this was a wise idea, as it could cost him his life. But Adele replied that he believed attempting something was better than doing nothing at all, and for that reason, he was willing to take the risk. At that moment, the arrival of another messenger from the Kingdom of Darkness was announced, and they asked Iris what should be done. She instructed them to allow him to enter the palace. Grossa arrived and apologized to Iris for entering the kingdom without prior notice. Iris asked her about the reason for her visit, and she replied that she carried a message from the king and earnestly requested that Iris read it. As soon as Iris finished reading the letter, it became clear that the King of Darkness was requesting an extension of the truce between the two kingdoms, so that the Kingdom of Darkness could have sufficient time to rebuild itself and return to its natural state. Fuse commented to Adele that this would at least delay the peace proposal he had intended to present, and would allow them to enjoy the truce for a while. Iris agreed with the suggestion and proposed taking the guests on a tour of the Kingdom of the Whites so they could better understand its nature. As they were leaving the palace, Shima expressed concern about Iris's health and asked whether she was feeling better and able to walk, and Iris replied that she was fine. They stepped outside the palace and saw Theo standing near the tree. He greeted his siblings and asked who the three guests were. When they told him that they were from the Kingdom of Darkness, he panicked and quickly hid behind Shima. They reassured him that these people were kind and would not harm him, so he came out and admitted that it was possible for there to be good people in the Kingdom of Darkness as well. They began talking and asked him what he was doing there, and he revealed that he was trying to heal an injured Tanuki star. He approached it and used his magic to treat it, which prompted Fuse to ask where he had learned such magic. He replied that Shima was the one who taught him, but Fuse objected, saying that he should not become a mage after previously declaring that he wanted to become a knight. Theo jokingly replied that he no longer wished to be a knight, because if he became one, he would eventually rise to the rank of commander and make Fuse his deputy. Everyone burst into laughter as they watched the Tanuki stars play around one another. Brusa commented that the white Tanuki stars in their kingdom were gentle, beautiful, and obedient, whereas those in the Kingdom of Darkness were nothing but a source of annoyance, even though they were still cute. Iris became excited to see them, but they told her that there was nothing cute about them, as they were black and frightening. Since the conversation turned to the blacks, the whites pointed out that the blacks wear black from their hair down to their feet, entirely black, which is what makes them different. The blacks replied that the whites, in turn, wear white from head to toe. As a result, they decided to exchange clothes so that each of them could experience how it felt to wear the other's attire. Fuse exchanged clothes with Adele, and both of them looked exceptionally good. Shima went to change with Grossa, but inside the changing room, Iris expressed her desire to participate as well. Since it would not be appropriate for her to give her clothes to a guest, Shima suggested that Iris wear Grossa's clothes while Grossa wore Shima's clothes. The two of them emerged looking beautiful, and they asked the prince to choose which one he liked more, to which he replied that both were beautiful. They returned to Shima's house and played chess, and Adele managed to defeat Fuse several times. As the hour grew late, Shima suggested that Fuse escort the guests to their rooms, but Iris refused because she was enjoying their company and complained that she had not had this much fun in a long time. Theo added that ever since she became queen, she no longer came to their house for dinner and was forced to remain in the palace to take care of the kingdom. Adele then suggested that they continue playing until Fuse won, but Fuse objected because he knew he might never win. They continued joking and playing until their stomachs began to rumble with hunger, so Shima offered to cook for them. Adele waited eagerly for her food, hoping it would be better than the meals he used to eat in the place where he had previously stayed, but as soon as they tasted it, they complained that it lacked salt and that its flavor was bland. Grossa had brought food with her from the Kingdom of Darkness, and when she presented it to the people of the Kingdom of Light, they complained that it was far too salty. At that moment, they realized that if they truly wanted to live together in peace, more compromises would be necessary. The prince took the food from the Kingdom of Darkness and mixed it with the food of the Kingdom of Light, then tasted it and found it excellent. The others tried it after him and liked it very much, and they continued eating from the mixture until the pot was completely empty. They then talked about other foods, and Fuse admitted that there was food even better than what they had just eaten, namely, the green wild vegetables that Iris herself gathers. These wild vegetables were well known and also existed in the Kingdom of Darkness, but the prince expressed his desire to taste the wild vegetables of the Kingdom of Light because he knew they absorbed more light there and therefore tasted better. When Iris heard this, she suggested that they go together to gather the wild vegetables, but they reminded her that it was already late, so they decided to do so the following day. That night, the prince found it difficult to sleep, so he stood in the corridor, where Grossa met him and asked what he was thinking about and whether he could confide in her. He shared his thoughts and told her that he saw Iris as a very ordinary person, free of complications. She replied that he was the same as Iris, an ordinary person, and that was precisely why he deserved to become the King of Darkness. She wished for him to ascend the throne soon and promised to support him whenever he needed it. He thanked her, and she told him to sleep early so they could go out the next day to gather the wild vegetables. At the same time, Iris also found it difficult to sleep and sat thinking about how full her day had been with adventures. The next morning, everyone headed into the forest under Iris's lead to gather the vegetables. Iris was extremely enthusiastic and rushed ahead, but Shima told her there was no need to hurry, as the vegetables were not going anywhere. Iris insisted that she was simply excited and wanted to arrive quickly. When they reached the forest, the people of the Kingdom of Darkness were surprised and asked whether this was truly the place where the vegetables were gathered. Iris explained that there were many places where vegetables could be collected, but she preferred this location because the vegetables there absorbed better light and thus were of higher quality. She showed them how to gather the vegetables, and Adele suggested that they split into groups to make the activity more enjoyable. Everyone agreed to the idea, and Fuse wished to be in the same group as Iris, while Grossa hoped to gather vegetables with the prince. However, when they asked Adele how he intended to divide the groups, he explained that they would form pairs, each consisting of one person from the Kingdom of Light and one from the Kingdom of Darkness, so they could get to know each other better. Grossa was not entirely comfortable with the idea, but she ultimately agreed, as she had no other choice. They sat reflecting on how to divide the groups, and Fuse insisted that, for safety, he should remain beside Iris. Iris interrupted them before anything else, and told them that there were several instructions they needed to know regarding the gathering of wild vegetables, explaining that some vegetables become bitter if they grow too much, and therefore the proper ones must be chosen carefully. She then showed them the correct way to cut the branches and harvest the vegetables. At that point, everyone realized that she was the most knowledgeable among them in this matter, so they decided that it would be best for her not to join any group and instead remain standing separately to observe them. Thus, Adele was paired with Shima, Grossa with Fuse, while the prince was with Theo, and everyone began searching for vegetables. During the search, Adele tried to get closer to Shima and know her better, but she was not very receptive to his gentle behavior. When he told her that they needed to get to know each other, she agreed reluctantly, and they continued searching together. They spotted a plant that looked very beautiful in Adele's eyes, but Shima was not sure whether it was edible. Adele felt there was no need for so much caution and suggested that they pick it first and confirm later, but Shima insisted that it would be better to ask beforehand. They called Iris and took her opinion before harvesting it. Adele commented that things were different in his city and that they had respect and caution in referring to the queen's opinion in most matters before taking action, but Shima did not share the same feeling and saw such matters as personal opinions that should not be mandatory. At the same time, the prince was with Theo, and when they found a green plant whose edibility they were unsure of, they called Iris to ask her about it. She examined it and told them that it was safe to eat, instructing them to harvest it. When Theo stepped forward, Iris asked the prince whether she could stay with them and gather vegetables alongside them, and he welcomed her. While they were talking, he accidentally touched her hand and immediately apologized. Elsewhere, Fuse remained on high alert throughout the day, gripping his sword and never letting go of it, which caused Grossa to grow curious and ask why he was so tense. He told her that he had to stay vigilant for Iris's sake and make sure she was safe. Grossa went to check on the others, while Fuse told her that he believed the people of the Kingdom of Darkness trusted one another more and did not live in mutual fear. Grossa confided her feelings to him and said that the reason for this trust was the prince, explaining that she felt he possessed the ability to lead their city and was already doing so. She reminded Fuse that she had heard his earlier conversation with Adele when he said that if he had to kill and destroy in order to become king, then he had to find another path. She felt that his idea of creating a new world resonated deeply with her, and that he truly had the power to achieve it, which was why she intended to follow him to the very end. Everyone finished gathering the vegetables and collected what they had harvested. Iris reviewed their findings and discovered that most of them had picked vegetables suitable for eating, except for a few, such as Fuse and Grossa, who had not asked Iris and had taken some inedible plants. Iris offered to cook for them, and Fuse was delighted. She and the girls went to wash the vegetables, while the men went to gather firewood. While washing the vegetables, Grossa noticed that they washed them more thoroughly than the people of the Kingdom of Light usually did. She explained that in the Kingdom of Darkness, vegetables were soaked overnight to remove bitterness, whereas the people of the Kingdom of Light soaked them for only a few minutes. They replied that this might be due to purity of spirit. Suddenly, Theo disappeared, and everyone began searching for him. The prince rushed to ask Iris if she knew where Theo was, and as he hurried, he slipped and collided with her, causing her to fall into the water, and then he fell on top of her. He immediately apologized and asked if she could help him find Theo. She told him that Theo had gone with Shima and Grossa. He apologized again and helped her out of the water, after which they dried their clothes, and later Theo met up with Fuse. After some time, everyone gathered and began cooking. When they sat down to eat, the people of the Kingdom of Darkness admitted that the vegetables of the Kingdom of Light were less bitter than what they were used to, but slightly bland in taste, while the people of the Kingdom of Light felt that the flavor was ordinary and acceptable. Shima brought out salt and suggested adding a little, and once they did, everyone enjoyed the meal. Fuse suggested that the envoys inform their king about the possibility of establishing trade relations between the two kingdoms so they could exchange knowledge in food and clothing, but Iris explained that the matter needed to be greater than just food. She believed they also needed to meet and interact more, as she herself wished to spend time with them again. After several days, the king requested the envoys to return to the city. Adele walked along the road with the prince, complaining that the king was far too hasty and would not even allow them to stay a few more days, forcing them to leave quickly. He noticed Fuse ahead and was asked by him what he had been muttering about. Adele looked at him with concern, and Fuse asked whether he was afraid of what would happen when they returned to the land of the Kingdom of Darkness. Adele replied that there was no need to worry about him, and that he would be fine. Fuse reminded him of what they needed to do as soon as they arrived in the city of the Kingdom of Darkness, the first proposal being a trade agreement between the two kingdoms. Adele reassured him that he would tell the king that the people of the Kingdom of Light were not evil, and that they could live in a state of balance. Aboard the ship, the people of the Kingdom of Light sent various foods and other items to the people of the Kingdom of Darkness. Grossa coordinated the transport of these goods onto the ship, thinking about how much she would miss these days. Fuse returned the swords of Adele and the prince and escorted them to the palace, where they met Iris as she was writing a letter proposing the establishment of a trade agreement between the two kingdoms and asking them to deliver the letter to the king. Adele reassured her that they would hand it to the king, then asked her what she meant by balance. She told him that balance meant the two kingdoms living in peace and harmony, but he laughed in response and said that this was not balance in his view, and that the strongest warrior had not created them to live in such balance. From his perspective, the people of the Kingdom of Light lived in a radiant light that the people of the Kingdom of Darkness had never seen, enjoying good food, protection, and a peaceful life, while the people of the Kingdom of Darkness had received the worst share from the strongest warrior, who had granted them no blessings and from whom they had gained nothing. Therefore, the only balance possible in his view was for the Kingdom of Darkness to rule the entire world. Dark power surged within him, his horns grew, and he grasped his sword with the intent to kill Iris. The situation became extremely dangerous, and there was no time for the queen's guards to intervene. But before he could succeed, the prince drew his sword and split Adele in two. Shock spread among everyone, and it took them moments to comprehend what had happened. The knights ordered Fuse to seize the prince, and Fuse, enraged, declared that he had been a fool to believe that the envoy's intentions were good. He unleashed all his anger on the prince, striking and kicking him before ordering his arrest. At that moment, Iris began to doubt whether she was truly making the right decision and called out for them to stop. But no one listened, and they took the prince to prison. Meanwhile, Grossa was bewildered by what was happening inside the palace and waited for the prince, but the sailors told her that they had to depart immediately because the envoys had been arrested and no one knew what had truly happened. After Fuse issued the order to arrest the prince, anger turned inward, and he began to reproach himself, calling himself foolish for having hoped things would turn out differently. Shima came to calm and console him, telling him that they had not known what would happen and that they had not been wrong to trust the envoys. Fuse complained of his exhaustion and said that he had been happy because there was hope for even a small form of unity between the two kingdoms. He then asked her whether she truly believed that balance could exist only through hostility and combat, and also wondered whether knights were destined to fight forever. Theo joined the conversation and asked Fuse why he was so anxious about a future that might never come, since the future is unknown and no one lives forever, and he was certain that they would not live forever either, so why all this worry? He then told them about a quarrel he had had with his neighbors the day before, and although the quarrel had not yet ended, he was sure it would end soon, because no one can keep fighting forever. After that he left, and his siblings silently wished and prayed that he would not grow up to become a warrior in these wars. On the other hand, Iris was deeply frustrated, sitting and thinking about what she could do to achieve balance and unity. Suddenly, the strongest warrior appeared before her and told her that in order to bring about the balance and unity she desired, she had to be fully aware of what she was capable of protecting, and then truly protect it. In the prison, the prince was confused and disturbed, unable to understand what mistake he had made. He recalled how Fuse had attacked and beaten him, and thought to himself that he did not know what he should have done. He wondered whether the king had secretly ordered Adele to kill the queen, and if so, then the king must have had a reason, and perhaps he should not have intervened at all. He was uncertain whether his decision had been right and felt completely disoriented. Suddenly, he saw a white cat standing before the door of his cell. The door opened abruptly, and the white cat called out to him. He was astonished and wondered whether it wanted to lead him out, so he followed it down the corridor. The cat transformed into a jewel, from which Iris emerged, and the sphere shattered as he caught her in his arms. They spoke together, and Iris told him how deeply she sought peace. He replied that he desired the same thing, and revealed his identity to her as the Prince of Darkness, and the heir to the future King of Darkness. Iris told him that she had sensed it, and that she knew they were both striving toward the same goal. He said that he wished to achieve true balance and asked her to wait for him. Then he returned on his way to the Kingdom of Darkness, carrying hope for unity in his heart. Iris walked on, thinking about him, telling herself that he had always been there, yet confined, and from the moment she first saw him, she had immediately known he was the prince. However, when she observed his behavior and way of thinking, she feared that he might not be able to bear the full burden of kingship as required, and that he might not become the true king the world needed. Even so, she felt she would not have another chance to speak with him alone before his departure, and she was glad that she had finally been able to talk to him. She remembered his words that together they would bring peace to the world, and his promise to help her, and she clung to that promise, hoping that he would be able to fulfill it. After that, the people of the Kingdom of Darkness attacked the Kingdom of Light once again, and Iris went out to fight them. When the battle ended, she returned to the palace, where Shima and Fuse informed her that large numbers of monsters were gathering around their cities everywhere, and that they sensed a possible simultaneous attack. Iris ordered them to alert the knights and mages to be on full alert, affirming that she herself would be ready and would go to support any city that came under attack. However, she knew that leaving the central position would expose the palace itself to danger, so she assigned Fuse to remain in the palace and defend it against any assault. At that point, Fuse requested permission to depart on a mission, a request that seemed nearly impossible since the entire country was in danger and, as commander of the knights, he could not abandon his post. Fuse defended his position and reminded them that the queen had been injured in the last battle and had not yet fully recovered. He said that he wanted to search for a cure for her condition, no matter the cost, even though he did not know how long it would take. Despite the importance of his reason, everyone felt that the risk was far too great to allow him to leave. They rejected his request, and the queen insisted that she would recover and told him not to worry about her. She ordered everyone to continue training with their units and ensure that they were prepared for any attack outside the palace. Shima then told the queen that Fuse had been sincere in everything he said and that he truly needed to go in search of a cure for her illness. Yet she herself could not agree to his departure and asked him who would lead the knights in his absence. He asked her whether she could take responsibility in his place. Shima was astonished and asked how she could possibly command both mages and knights together, insisting that it was impossible. He then suggested assigning the role to Theo instead, a suggestion that seemed extremely absurd since Theo was not a knight and was still a young child. Shima assumed her brother was joking, so she left and walked away. Fuse continued thinking about a solution to save Iris. His companion noticed how troubled he was and told him that he had a solution to his problem. He explained that the queen's body was intact, but her power had not yet reconnected with the energy she used while fighting, and therefore she needed a place where benevolent energy capable of healing her existed in great abundance. If they could bring her a portion of that energy, she would recover immediately instead of waiting for natural healing. He told him that he knew the location of this energy, but it was extremely dangerous, and no one who had entered that place had ever returned completely unharmed. Fuse asked whether the place was truly that dangerous, such that even the great commander of the Knights of Light, or even the elf, might not survive. He replied that survival was possible, but wondered whether the queen would allow him to leave during such a critical time. Fuse lied and said that Iris had agreed to his departure, and they decided to set out immediately. At the same time, Shima continued her training with the mages until a knight came and told her that Fuse had disappeared. She immediately went to inform Iris, telling her that she believed Fuse had gone to search for a cure for her condition. She apologized, but Iris assured her that there was no need to worry and that they could handle the situation. Fuse had indeed departed with the elf toward the mountain, where he showed him the path, warning him that no human had ever entered that place and returned fully alive. Fuse insisted that they would succeed. Meanwhile, in the city of the blacks, the prince was recalling his last confrontation with the whites that day. No one could know that he had met the queen, so he boarded the ship quickly and left. Yet since returning to the city, he had been unable to meet the king. He wondered whether this was because of Adele's incident, but he was not particularly concerned with seeing the king. What occupied his mind far more was Iris. He felt that she carried an immense burden on her small shoulders, not only the burden of the whites, but the burden of the entire world, and he awaited the moment when he would be able to help her. He continued his training with Fass, training with extraordinary speed and strength. Fass was surprised and asked what drove him to train so intensely, wondering whether he had become more determined after returning from the whites. The prince asked Fass about the whites and the blacks, and Fass told him that the king had announced a complete severance of all dealings between the whites and the blacks, and that he should no longer think about them. After that, the prince asked Fass about the meaning of balance and about his own view on the matter. The whites lived far away from the blacks, yet the king still questioned himself. Could this truly be called balance? Faz admitted that this was a question even the king himself had not found a clear answer to. He explained that he wished the entire world would become black, because only then, from his perspective, could they reach the balance they needed. However, the prince asked again, if that was balance, then what would the future say if the whites were completely eradicated? Fass replied that thinking about such a future was not his responsibility, and then they continued their training. Gru came to meet them and announced that the king had ordered her to ascend the mountain together with the prince to fight several monsters that had attacked the area, because he believed that ordinary knights would not be able to prevail. The prince went with her, and along the way she also began talking about the whites. When they encountered the monsters, Gru fell into an underground tunnel, and the prince jumped down after her. They began thinking about how to get out, when suddenly an enormous monster appeared and attacked them, leaving them momentarily unsure of how to act. At the same time, the queen learned of the monster attack and gathered her team to prepare for battle. Meanwhile, Ilanis and Fuse were still traveling along the single, desolate path. At the very same moment, Iris was fighting the monsters. During the battle, Iris reflected on the weight of her responsibility. She told herself that since becoming Queen of the Whites, she did not carry responsibility for the whites alone, but the responsibility for the balance of the entire world, the balance of all people, and that she had to preserve this balance. She was unsure whether balance meant that the two sides must fight endlessly, and she did not know what she was supposed to await until the end of her reign. The burden was extremely heavy, and she felt she could not bear it alone. so she remembered the prince's words when he said that one day he would carry this burden for her. After that, in the kingdom of the whites, they learned that dark monsters had attacked in great numbers, so they went out to fight them. At the same time, Fuse and Alanis continued their journey toward the shimmering drops. The path ahead was blocked, so Alanis used his magic to create a passage, but this caused a fissure to open in the mountain, and Fuse nearly fell into it. Alanis rushed to grab him and pull him to safety, but his sword fell into the fissure. Fuse thanked him, and they continued their journey. In the city of the whites, Iris found it difficult to fight the monsters alone, and Shima's strength had begun to wane as well. When several monsters confronted Shima and the mages with her, she was unable to defeat them, so Iris struck them from above. She then told them that they all needed to gather and recite the unity spell. A great light spread over the city, and a protective barrier formed around them. She told them that they were now safe, but that this protection would not last long, and that they needed to rest and prepare to fight again. Iris was exhausted and collapsed from fatigue, so Shima took her to her room and told her to rest for a while. In the forest, Fuse and Alanis saw a place of strange appearance. Alanis attacked it using his power and destroyed it, which shocked Fuse, because he had managed to use that power without runes. Alanis explained that he would not have been able to attack without runes, and that he had been carrying some with him. He showed Fuse where he had hidden them. Fuse told him that he was one of the finest fighters, and that there was no warrior superior to him in the kingdom. They continued their journey and drew very close to their destination. They found a sealed entrance, so Alanis destroyed it and they entered. They saw a stream of the shimmering drops, and Fuse rushed forward to take them, but the elf stopped him and told him that the place was in fact highly acidic and that approaching any closer would destroy him. He threw a stone inside, and they saw it return shattered into pieces. He told Fuse that they had to go back, rest, and plan properly, but Fuse refused. Even if it cost him his life, he had to ensure that the drops reached Iris. He was certain that the kingdom might be under attack at that very moment, and he had no time to waste. He entered the acidic liquid himself and seized the drop. On the other hand, Rosa helped the prince defeat the monster. He thanked her, and they continued searching for a path that would lead them to the summit of the kingdom. Along the way, she asked him whether he thought they would no longer be able to visit the kingdom of the whites, and told him that she had enjoyed his presence among them. She said she did not know what the king was thinking, but that none of them could oppose him. She then told him that she had caught some fish nearby and wanted to eat, and asked whether he would like to join her. He agreed, and they went to her home. At her house, she thanked him for coming with her, stepped closer, held his hand, and said that she knew his intentions toward the kingdom were noble, and that she wanted to support him. She also told him that from the first day she saw him, she had admired him, even though she knew that he loved Iris, the Queen of Light, and wanted to be with her. Her eyes filled with tears, and she ran away. Before leaving, she told him that she would always support him, no matter whom he chose to be with. In the end, Fuse and Alanis returned to the kingdom of the whites with the shimmering drops, and presented them to the queen. They were used on her, and she recovered immediately. She told Fuse what had happened while he was away, and he replied that he had heard about it from the knights. She told him that they did not know how long the barrier would last, and that they had to be prepared. When Iris had recovered, she went to pray, and remembered the promise the prince had made to her. She wished that she could lead the path of light together with him. While she was praying, Fuse came and interrupted her, saw her praying fervently, and told her not to exhaust herself with too much prayer, because their battle with the kingdom of the blacks was drawing near, and they needed all of her strength. Iris thanked him and apologized for always causing them trouble, and thanked him for the shimmering drops. He replied that she should not worry, because it was his official duty as a knight. The commander also voiced her concern, saying that she had always relied on him and his sister, and did not know what she would have done without them. But Fuse pledged that his entire family would remain in her service until the last day. He then left to train his knights in preparation for the battle. That day, the prince awoke with a strange feeling. He went outside the city and heard a merchant saying that this day was the final battle against the whites. The merchant advised people to enjoy themselves at least before the battle, because those who waited to enjoy life afterward might never get the chance. When the merchant noticed the prince, he was surprised that the prince had not been invited to the battle, and asked whether he had rebelled. The prince denied it, and wondered himself why neither he nor Grosa had been summoned. Some children came to the prince and asked for his opinion about the battle. They said that their mother told them they had to win because the whites' flying island made their clothes fade more slowly, and for that reason their parents said they would be victorious. They asked the prince whether he also believed they would win, and he answered yes. Suddenly, one of the guards approached and called out to the prince. The prince asked him why he had come, and the guard replied that he had been sent to summon him. The prince went with him, passing by Grossa just before the war began. Before the battle erupted, Fuse and Shima asked Theo what he would do if the war did not end in their favor. He answered that he would run away and save himself, jumping into the river and using magic. They told him that this should be the very last resort, and that before that he should look for a safe place to hide. He assured them that he would protect himself, and advised them as well to flee if they felt the war had become too overwhelming. Fuse boasted that it was impossible for him to lose, and that even if he had to keep fighting no matter what happened, he would continue. He insisted on fighting, so Theo reminded him that if he fought no matter the cost, he would end up fighting alone, and if that was the case, it would be better for him to run. Fuse replied to his brother that as long as they were fighting alongside Iris, they would never lose, and he swore to himself that even if his very last drop of blood were spilled, he would protect Iris. At last, the war began. Fuse gathered the knights, Shima gathered the mages, and Iris stepped forward to face the Dark King. The Dark King told her that no matter how hard she tried, she would never defeat him because he was not like light, which weakens, hides, and then fades away. He was darkness, growing ever stronger and wider until it claimed what it desired. In the end, the war would exhaust her, and she would submit to her fate. She rejected a fate she had never chosen, and told him that she was protecting the balance of the world, and that she would continue to do so even if it consumed her entire life. In the kingdom of the whites, dark beasts attacked children and women, and the white knights tried to protect the people. As they shielded the women and urged them to flee toward the palace, darkness began to spread everywhere. The darkness took control of one of the knights and drove him to attack his own people, but another knight killed him and led the civilians to safety. Theo hid behind a tree, watching the entire battle. One of the dark beasts flew overhead, so he remained hidden until it passed. But when he looked at the kingdom and saw everyone fighting with no one truly safe, he refused to remain idle and used his magic to destroy the beast. Darkness began to cover almost all of the kingdom of the whites. Shima tried to dispel it using one of the union spells, but she failed. Darkness overtook most of the mages, and she attempted to protect them using the Shield of Affection, but the shield shattered in the sky. Iris continued fighting the Dark King, and when she realized that she might not win, she decided to unleash the full power of the original runes at once. The Dark King warned her that if this plan failed, her people could be annihilated, but she reminded him that if she lost the battle in the first place, the balance would be lost anyway, and her people would be destroyed regardless. She told him not to toy with her mind. She tried to attack him, but he struck back fiercely, and she fell into the kingdom of the whites. Shima grew furious and screamed at the original rune, demanding to know why it would not protect them. Suddenly, Iris collapsed to the ground, and those around her caught her. At the same time, Fuse confronted Fass, who called him a coward and told him he would never win. Fass used darkness to drive Fuse away completely, declaring that he would remember him as a cowardly knight commander from Axe. Shima asked Iris if there was any way to protect the city. Iris replied that they could try another union spell, but when they attempted it, it failed. The Dark King appeared and ordered them to surrender and accept their fate. Shima asked Iris if there was any other solution. Iris said yes, but it was extremely dangerous. Shima told her to proceed, since she was the queen. Iris resorted to her final option, while the Dark King boasted of his power. Shima attacked him in rage, but he responded by engulfing her in darkness. Iris then turned to the original runes and released her final scream, begging for help. Amid the chaos of war, a knight led the prince to the place the king had ordered him to go. Along the way, he saw many knights surrounding him and realized they were not there to protect him, but to carry out the king's will and kill him. He fought them and eventually reached the place where he found Adele. The prince was not greatly surprised to see that Adele was still alive, for he had felt that splitting him before had been far too easy and swift for someone who could be a potential heir to the king. Adele asked if he was shocked, and the prince answered no. The prince asked why he had attacked the Queen of Light, and Adele reacted in surprise, asking whether the question was directed at him or at the prince himself. He then said that killing the queen was the will of the king and the will of the entire people of darkness. The prince was stunned. Adele asked why the prince had stopped him from carrying out the king's will, and explained that even though the prince had stopped him, it had not stopped the king's plan because the attack had weakened Iris. He admitted that Iris was nothing more than a young girl and that even with the power of the runes, she was still a girl. The attack had made her afraid and hesitant about her own power. He said that in a war like the one between the whites and the blacks, where the leaders are strong, the victor is the one who surrenders last. And since Iris had feared this attack, she would certainly be the first to surrender, which would become the victory ticket for the blacks. He added that the Dark King was not foolish and that the true fool was the one who believed him to be so. The king had a complete plan to dominate the entire world. The war had already begun in the kingdom of the whites, and no one truly understood the king's mind, not even Fass, who fought without knowing the king's real intentions. Adele said that he alone truly understood the king, and that this was not strange because he carried within himself an immense reserve of darkness just like the king, and might even be his true son. He revealed that the reason the prince and Grossa had been kept away from the war was because the king knew they might side with the whites, and that would make them difficult to control. The war was ongoing, and Adele declared that he was responsible for killing the prince. The battle began. At first, the prince tried to restrain himself against Adele, but Adele continued striking him violently, forcing the prince to fight seriously. In the end, the prince stabbed him, but Adele laughed and admitted that he could not defeat the prince, which was why the king had sent him only to delay him, not to kill him. The sky filled with warriors of the blacks, and without delay, the king would take the original rune and destroy the balance, thereby destroying the entire world. The world would become entirely black, and the king would be satisfied. The prince wondered why the king wanted to destroy the world. He tried to make his way to the kingdom of the whites to fight alongside them, but monsters attacked him. Fortunately, Grossa arrived and saved him, clearing a path for him. He had no wings to fly to the floating island, and as he searched for a solution, a powerful light shone upon him. Wings sprouted from his back and he flew toward the kingdom of the whites. At the same time, Fass was fighting Fuse and suddenly vanished. Shima also managed to escape from the Dark King's grasp. Iris reached the original runes and prayed, apologizing for not waiting for the prince. She consumed the power of the runes and destroyed the entire city. When the knights witnessed the terrifying power of the runes, they realized that she had destroyed herself with her own power. The prince arrived flying, but it was already too late. He stabbed the Dark King and destroyed him, and everyone stood waiting to see what fate would befall the two kingdoms afterward. Then a scene was shown on a deserted island, a valley resembling our hero. And here the story comes to an end, dear viewers. We hope you enjoyed it. If you would like a second season, let us know in the comments. Before you close the video, do not forget to press the like button to support us, subscribe to the channel for more episodes, and activate the notification bell to receive all new anime releases. Share your opinions in the comments, and we will meet again in future episodes. Goodbye.